Do not move to Kenya if you have any of the next 5 expectations. I moved 2 years ago from Germany to Nairobi. Since then I have learned a lot. I went through different things, I had many challenges, I had great ups and downs. Now I'm quite peaceful and happy with my life I built here. But there are still things I wish I would have known earlier. And this is what I want to talk about in this video, about these 5 expectations that might make things very difficult for you if you come with a mindset like this and move to Nairobi, Kenya. Then let's dive into the topic. And let me tell you, don't expect Kenya and Nairobi especially to be cheap just because it's in an African country. The reality is, things are compared to the US or some European countries cheaper. But on the other hand, that many things can also be much more expensive and can be very costly in the end of the day. So when you think of, let's say my apartment rent here is quite cheap. We pay $900 approximately with all utilities, and I share with 2 of my roommates. So in the end, I spent approximately $300 a month. But you can also find apartments for much more money. And I met some other foreigners that are also paying much higher rents. It's possible, but in the end of the day, this price for your rental apartment here can be the same as in the States, because apartments here can range from as little as $300-400 depending on the size, all the way up to $3,000 and even further than this. So be sure where to find your apartment, where to look out for it, and don't just expect that things are cheap because it's Africa. Another thing is that you can also expect some groceries to be quite cheap. If you see some imported goods here like cheese, like electronics, like different things that are not made within Kenya, they can also be very costly because they have very high import taxes, and this makes some products unnecessarily expensive. What I do here is I look out for more locally produced goods, fresh vegetables, and things that are really manufactured here in Kenya, and this makes things more affordable for you. And why am I telling you this? When I came here first, I was also spending much more money because most things are anyways cheaper here than back home in Germany, so I can just spend and my money is still worth more than back home. But in the end of the day, I was spending the same amount of money or even more sometimes in the first couple of months because I was not focusing on like how much I actually spent, because I went out to eat in restaurants quite a lot. I went out to do a lot of activities in the beginning. I didn't watch out for the rent price. I was just not aware of how expensive things can get when they accumulate. So just that you are aware, it's not necessarily cheap if you don't hold your money together or like look out for certain things. And it's just a warning because I made this mistake myself. The second point I want to mention is, don't think the financial freedom if you're starting a business here will come immediately. I had to learn a hard lesson. When I came here first, I thought that everything will be quite easy, and that's because I thought that I'm from a developed country like Germany, and I lived in the States for over a year, and I traveled to so many other different countries that I thought my vision and my perspective is so broad, and I know so many things, I saw so many things that I just took it a bit too easy here in Kenya. I thought I would start my things here, everything would be easy, but this was absolutely not the case. I still had to figure out how things work here on the ground. I still had to figure out how I can, and what I even wanted to do was difficult to find, because when I came here I had a bunch of ideas with me, but in the end I figured out that none of them make sense just because I didn't look out for the perfect product for this market here. It also made it difficult for me in terms of my savings, my money. I came with some investment money, and I came with like little money in my pocket to sustain myself until everything runs smoothly. But this takes much longer than you think, because you need to adjust first to the culture, you need to understand how the market operates, you need to understand the people, what are their needs actually, what do they want from you, and not just start right away and think of making profits right away. And I mean, this is the same thing if you did anything already in other countries. This is the exact same thing for you. So don't expect the financial freedom to come immediately after moving here. Another very important lesson is, don't ignore the cultural nuances and also the business nuances. When I grew up in Germany, like, we try to keep time as much as possible. We have our habits in terms of like how to interact with different people, how to talk to people business-wise, but also private, and how to make our connections. When I moved here, things are quite different. Let's say, for just to give you one example, when I was here for the first couple of weeks, I had quite a few meetings to just get to know the local culture and like meet people from different markets to understand how things actually work here. And the first thing I had to figure out was that people here are actually quite late, and sometimes it can be 10 minutes or 30 minutes or maybe even an hour, sometimes even later, depending on the purpose of the meeting. This is something you need to really keep in your mind. People here are different because the culture is different. People behave different. If you want to move here and if you want to live here properly, you need to adjust to the life here and to the culture. instead of trying to force your culture on the other ones. And the next point I want to talk about is don't neglect a support system for yourself. Especially when you move from a foreign country, if you come from the States, if you come from Europe, if you come from any other country, even in Africa, you don't have the same amount of people and the same people you trust in Kenya than you had them back home. This is something you need to build out from scratch. If you maybe have like a couple of people, I knew some people when I came here first, but it's still not the same thing because in Germany I had my whole family, I had a bunch of friends all over the country. So in case of anything, I knew where I can go to or like where I can stay when I travel somewhere. But here, if you move to Kenya, it might be different again because you need to build the support system from scratch. You need to figure out where to meet the right people for you. You need to figure out who is actually genuine with you and don't just want to spend time with you because you're a foreigner and they think you have something what they can get some value from. And because I went through the same things, I can tell you how to do this. So the way I managed to meet a lot of people here is basically just to go to a lot of events. I went to a lot of networking events, a lot of business events to meet the right people for my business first off. But through this process, I also met the right people that have the same and similar interest in me. For example, you can use Eventbrite, and Eventbrite shows you certain kinds of activities people do here all over Nairobi. And what you can find there is, for instance, runners clubs, you can find book clubs, you can find different kinds of events where people with your interests come together to make things easier for you. But even if you just go out, people are very social. You can start conversations with many people, start talking to people basically everywhere, and they're most of the time very social. And maybe you will find some of the right people there. But I think once you got your network, you met the first couple of people, they will just bring you into their circle, and then from there everything goes quite fast for you here. And this is just for you to be aware that you shouldn't neglect the fact that you still need a support system, that you still need a couple of people to not feel completely lonely in case of whatever happens. The next thing I want to say is don't underestimate the challenges you will have here in Kenya in general. When I came here first, I was alone, I was by myself, and I had to figure out everything. For me, it was more challenging because I had to figure out also the business visa process, all this document process, and without having the right connections, I had my issues with the lawyers, I had my issues with the immigration office, I had my issues with like different kinds of things. And I think more the longer you stay, the more you will face. But at some point you understand how everything works and you can make it much smoother. Things are just different. If you come from a different country to Kenya, things will be very different for you. If it's bureaucracy, if it's the social life, if it's your work, if it's your relationships, whatever it is, things will be just very different. And the message I want to give you with this is basically just like, don't expect the things to be the same way as back home, wherever you are from, and just be ready to adapt to everything. Just be ready to tackle all these challenges. And I think if you have the ability and you're ready and like strong enough for it, and then you can definitely build a joyful life here in Nairobi and in Kenya, wherever you want to move to, just with having a conscious mind and don't romanticizing the image of living here. Sometimes it can be as challenging or even more challenging than wherever you used to live before that. I hope these 5 don'ts will help you for your move to Kenya, or even when you already live here, they will help you to navigate life in Kenya, that you manage your expectations and just see things for the way they are. Then I think you can live very happy and a fulfilled life here in Nairobi, Kenya, or wherever you're gonna stay. Now please drop me down below in the comments how you thought it will be and how things turned out and how you overcame every challenge you had. I see you in the next video, and thank you so much for watching.